Hey, this is Michael Lindsay from Vital MX. We're out here at Monster Mountain in Alabama, and we're finally riding the 2017 Honda CRF450R. You know, we've really just dug into this bike so much over the past couple months with tech specs, so we're just gonna jump right into the impressions and tell you what we think. So for me, the first standout thing I noticed just in my couple warm-up laps, just anywhere on the track at all, is really the change in the feedback the rider is gaining from the front end. I just have a much better understanding of what the bike does. When compared to the old model, the old bike always felt a little bit, it felt very planted on the front end, so it turned well, but at the same time, there was just things about the front end flex I didn't feel comfortable with, just setting up the front fork to knifing the bike in. There was things that didn't work. On the new bike though, I'm just always getting this information where it feels like I can figure out when it's gonna push, where it's gonna grip, and I just never really had a moment where I thought I was gonna toss it, which was great. It just allowed me to put in so many consistent laps today and just really enjoy it. I mean, when it comes down to it, speaking of the front end, there's a huge point to talk about. Honda has gone back to a spring fork. Everybody's talking about it's a 49mm lower tube. This is really close to an A kit or even a works level fork because the damping rods are quite a bit larger than what we've had before. Overall, the setup, I was a little worried because even though we're going back to spring, some people complained about Honda spring forks in the past. Dealing out here at Monster Mountain, we've got a lot of clay, some sand, a couple hard pack sections. The setup we had in the morning was great. There was so much traction, you could really force the bike in. It was very progressive, just a real great feel. As the day went on, I definitely went a little bit softer, upwards of from 2 to 3 clicks. I kind of kept jumping around. And I could definitely see this. I'm a little bit lighter on the scale for a 450 rider, so I typically expect to do this. But overall, I just really, once again, enjoyed that feedback, and I think a lot of it may have to do with that fork and just the overall front end in particular. So moving to the rear of the bike, the whole just bike balance period is a lot different. The front end is farther out on this bike, the rear end's in more, the shock layout's different, so I was really curious how that was gonna work with leverage ratios and everything. Once again, a very progressive setup. No major complaints. It felt like in the morning with all the traction we had, it definitely appeared to be soft with just great clay and just being able to put the power down. So initially I went a little bit stiffer on low speed, a couple things to hold it up in places, but then as the day went on and it got rougher, there's a few places I realized the rebound wasn't quite fast enough at times. I sped it up a little bit to kind of settle quicker into the chop for acceleration. But overall, it's just a couple clicks here and there. It feels like the base setting is pretty on point. So the next major point everybody's curious about, how is the new engine? For years, Honda's been very conservative in this department. But on paper, you look at the new engine, it looks like they took out all the stops to really make this thing competitive. The bike is much, much more powerful across the entire board, especially mid to top where the Honda really hasn't been before. But at the same time, it's not a burly beast. It's extremely rideable. As I said, down low, it's pretty similar to the last bike. It comes on in a very progressive manner. It doesn't bark really hard, but there's definitely more torque off the bottom. The biggest improvement for me is completely mid to top. The Hondas have always signed off a bit early, and even like the rev end sequence is a little bit harsh, so when you ride up and hit off the rev limiter, it really kind of kicks in and binds up the bike at time. And this is where, to me, the biggest improvement comes in. It just really pulls through the rest of the range, and right when it hits off the top, it just comes in real minorly. There's a lot of sections where you're in second, and you're like, man, I don't want to shift before that corner, and you can hold it on, and it just starts to tap off the top right as you're going in, and it's just so usable. Is there anything negative? There are a couple little things that still pop into my mind. One is the bike is optional to buy an electric starter kit for. Ours was a little bit hard to start when it was warm today. There was once or twice where I was a little bit irritated, and in the back of my mind, I'm wishing I had it. I'll be honest, if I bought the bike, I would buy the electric start kit to go with it as well. The term Honda's really been using on this bike is absolute whole shot, and it has to come with the chassis balance changes and the grip the rear end has. They've been able to mathematically prove that the bike accelerates harder and quicker than the old model, but it's also making more power. You can break it loose, but it also definitely does put that power to the ground easier, and I think that's part of maybe gonna be the situation that people don't understand how much bare the engine is on this bike on the bottom end, because it still puts the power to the ground so well. Is this better than the past Honda 450 models? For me, yes, in every aspect. There was nothing about this bike that I was riding and going, oh, you know, I really like this about the last model. No, everything for me was an improvement with this bike. Now, is it gonna be life-changing? It's more competitive. It's definitely gonna be up there, in my opinion, for a shootout at the end of the year. I don't know if it'll take the top spot. There's still a couple key characteristics about other models that stand out, but I think they've really done a great job of wrapping so many good points into one package. And typically that ends up being the best bike, so we'll have to see.